So on my mind this morning is the story of horrifically abused child who was raped and just abused by all these old men. And the girl I'm talking about here is Mary, the birth mother of the guy who we later knew as Jesus, right? And she was horrifically abused, and so was Joseph, actually, and threatened to keep her. And there's lots of horrific, like, people were murdered, and, I mean, these... So where did I find this? There's a story of Mary's life it's called the Proto-Evangelium of James. And it's supposed to be a fairly credible resource for Mary's life. I reread it this morning because I want to talk about it, but it's so awful that I just have to process it before I can even talk about it. It's just so awful. And it rings true in a lot of ways, but there's one really big way that it does not ring true. I'm just going to say this, and then I'm going to go into some other thing I want to talk about. It talks throughout about the concept of sin and sinning and all this stuff. But these are Jews we're talking about here. We don't have sin. Sin is a thought crime, right? It's a Christian concept. We don't have sin. We don't talk about sin. There is no concept of sin in Judaism. These are Jews. These are ancient Jews we're talking about, right? What we have is called transgression, which is a totally different thing. Transgression means you've committed a crime, basically. You've transgressed. You've violated someone with your behaviors, with actual actions. You have violated someone. You have perpetrated on someone. It's called transgression. That's the concept in Judaism. And yet throughout this book that apparently took place in, ancient Judea, they're talking about sin. There is no concept of sin in Judaism. So that one is just, every time I'm like, okay, so this is like a filter from, Christianity on this story. But the whole story is about this horrific abuse of this young girl who was abandoned at the age of 3, stolen from her mother, and abandoned to the temple at the age of 3. And it's so awful. I have to process it before I talk about it, but look it up and read the story. All right, I'm gonna go into another video, which I can talk about.